Alright guys, as I've been doing for the past few weeks, I am going to be reviewing the Falcon and the Winter Soldier each week as it comes out. This is new for me. I don't typically do TV shows on my channel, but I thought, hey, I've gotten some requests to do TV shows before in the past, so I would give this one a shot. It's only supposed to be 6 episodes. So here we go with the newest episode, episode 3 of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So, what did I think of episode 3 of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Well, this week did take a turn, I thought. Actually, a turn started to happen last week, and there were a couple of things that I didn't mention in last week's review that, well, honestly, I didn't care for, that I didn't think were needed. I didn't want to mention them because I was like, it's maybe it's not going to be a thing. And not that stuff bled over to this week. It didn't. There were some things, and if you've listened to the news at all, or like movie news as of late, you'll know what I'm talking about. I just didn't think that this show was the place for it. That's my personal opinion. If you're of a different opinion, that's your opinion, and that's fine. But there were some things that happened, in particular, one thing in particular, in last week's show that really just slammed the brakes on the show and on the episode, and you're like, what is going on here? Why right here in the middle of this? But beyond that, last week's show, as I mentioned then, was much more action-packed. It wasn't quite as much character building. We got a little bit, but it seemed like they were starting the story off. And this week's show continues on right where last week's show left off. And, from the get-go, I liked where they were going. The premise, the prospect of what was going to happen in this week's show, I was like, okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. I can get down with that. There's well, if you haven't seen last week's show, by the way, there will be spoilers here for last week's show. FYI, I just can't get away from them going into this week's. I'll try and avoid any big spoilers for this week's show. Not that there really are any, but we'll get to that in a minute. That's probably my biggest thing before I get into anything else. Nothing really happened. This week's episode, just nothing really happened, and you get that with a lot of shows. You'll have an episode that's just filler. It's just kind of there, entertaining or not, just nothing really there to progress the story forward in a meaningful way. And that's fine, or I mean, it is what it is. It's more acceptable, rather, in a show that your average, more traditional type shows that have, somewhere in the neighborhood of 22 episodes, or even 18, or some even have, you've got some of the other ones. When you get down to like the 13 episodes and 12 episodes a season, it gets a little bit sketchy there. But this show is going to have 6 episodes. 6 episodes. You can't afford to have a filler episode, just a episode that nothing's really happening. It doesn't, that nothing is really getting pushed forward, really. There's a couple of little things here, but not 40 minutes worth. And that's my biggest takeaway, my biggest issue with this show. I've got others, but it's my biggest one, is that just why? This did nothing. There was a thing that happens in the beginning that leads off of last week that was a sorely missed opportunity, by the way. This thing that happens in the beginning that they are to do. This person they're going to get and how they get them. You think, oh, wow, okay, it's going to be like this big to-do. It's going to be most of the episode, and the idea is pretty cool. You're like, okay, I can get down with this. This might be pretty neat. But then it's just like, no, they tell you about it. One of the characters tells the other character about it, and it's already happened. And it's like, what? That sounded like, or at least the prospect of it being really cool was there, and we didn't see any of it. It's the equivalent of watching a cutscene in a video game of a really cool moment that you wanted to do instead. And in a game, you want to do the things, you don't want to see them. And it's the same thing here. A little bit. You want to see them, you don't want to hear about them. So that was a bit disappointing, but I was like, you know what? Maybe it's because they got shit to do. They got shit to get to in this episode. So, okay, they glazed over that. But they don't. They don't really do anything. They set up a character from the MCU, a previous character that wasn't really that big of a character. That's kind of the thing here. If you've seen Zemo is here, I mean, we know that from the end of last episode. But they set up another character from MCU's past, if you will, that really wasn't a very big character. And this character comes in, and I vaguely remembered her, or sorry, this character, and I was like, okay, yeah, I remember the face, and when they gave like a quick little rundown of what this character did, I was like, yeah, okay. I think I kind of remember you doing something like that, but this was not a central character in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But this character is now, I guess they're gonna gear this character up to be somebody, at least in this show. The character has a purpose here, but it's, I don't know, man. I don't know where they're going with this character. Now, I will say the one thing I did take away from this episode I did like was Zemo. Zemo, to me, was always an interesting character in idea. The fact that this guy was able to disband more or less the Avengers and create that discord between them, just through his smarts, pretty much, his intelligence, his intellect. I thought that was really cool. And we were led to believe in the Winter Soldier that he's just, or no, I'm sorry, Civil War. Yeah, right? Or was it Winter Soldier? Whichever one Zemo's in. I think it was Winter Soldier, yeah. We're led to believe that this character is just a guy. He's just a guy who's got an axe to grind, a bone to pick, and he goes about it in a very devious yet intelligent way, and that's what really drove that whole movie, and that all those events drove the MCU to where it went. I thought that was really interesting. Now, this Zemo that we have now, we find that there's more to him. He's got a whole lot more, his backstory in his life, and he's kind of a badass too, and like physically and mentally. And I did like that character. Out of everything that was or was not in this episode, and seeing as how not much was going on, I liked what we learned about him. It's a bit contrived because it's like, okay, you got this guy. His most interesting thing about him was that he was just every guy. I don't know what the comic book lore is, but in what we know in the MCU up to this point, he's just a dude. He's just a guy who's got an axe to grind, like I said, and he did the legwork to make some shit go down for his own beliefs, or whether they're right or wrong. But that was interesting to me. It was this everyday guy battling and winning essentially the superheroes. But now they've effectively kind of made him a superhero. Well, not a hero, a super person. He doesn't necessarily have like superpowers, but he fights and gets physical and all that like they do. So he's not just, while he was interesting, he's kind of neat in retrospect looking back. I kind of would have liked if he was not necessarily like totally useless, but maybe he did require their help a bit, because he does, at least in this episode, team up with Falcon, or with Bucky and Sam, and you kind of get the idea that he doesn't need to. By the end of the episode, you're like, what does he doesn't need them. What's he need them for? I mean, there's no reason to keep them around. He's kind of a badass himself. I mean, he's holding, in one instance, he holds his own better than they do. So it's like, what is his meaning? What's his purpose to keep them around? That's why I would have liked if maybe he wasn't as, special forces super badass guy, with the gun and everything. If he was, he needed them around, that would have, I think, served the story, made it a bit more interesting and not quite as generic. Still enjoyed the character because the character's played wonderfully, and he's a really interesting character. I will give him that. But I just wish they had maybe not made him as cookie cutter as the characters are or are becoming here in the MCU. But beyond that, and that's kind of like what I picked away from the episode, my biggest complaint is that just nothing happens. There is, like I said, a thing that happens within the last 5 seconds of the show. a thing happens, so a line is spoken, a character is referenced, and it's like, I mean, it's like that, and smash cuts to black, and that was really, I mean, okay, the once again prospect of what could happen with that, yeah, that's a thing that could be something in the next episode that could be interesting depending on what way they go with it. But beyond that thing and the thing that happens in the beginning of the show, there's not really much going on here. It was filler, and I'm kind of losing my patience with this show. It's still very well made. It looks great. It's acted well. It's very MCU. If, like I said with the other episodes, if someone walked in the room and saw you watching this, they could definitely be fooled into thinking you were watching a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. But so it's got the production values of that, but it's just not much is going on. I liked where they started the show, episode 1, giving us that deep dive into these two characters and how things have been going on with them. I thought that was a very interesting take, and I was like, okay, they're doing something different. I like it. And then episode 2 comes along, and they do, give us the MCU side of things, and that's cool. I was all right with that. Let's see what episode 3 happens or has, and we get this. And we don't really get much of anything. That kind of bothered, or not bothered me. I just found myself kind of thinking, did I just waste 40 minutes? I mean, I don't feel like we're really any closer to where we were going, where we were at the beginning of the episode. We didn't really move the story forward. Yes, there's this, it's not really a revelation, but this big thing, I guess, depending on how you look at it, that pops up at the very end of the episode. But that I don't like that kind of cop-out cheap thing that the showrunners will do with episodes that they know aren't, there's not anything. They do that with filler episodes. They know nothing's in. They're like, okay, we've had this episode that really just means fuck all nothing the whole time, but we're going to throw this thing at the very end so people will be like, oh yeah, that episode was awesome because that's the one when that thing happened. But it's not. I mean, no, that's not how you do it. I can't take 5 seconds over the other 39 and a half minutes that came before it that nothing really happened. That 5 seconds or 30 seconds or whatever doesn't make up for the 99.9% of the rest of the show. Once again, it's not bad. The show, well acted, looks great. There's just nothing happening. It's just pointless. It's just kind of pointless. And while I watched it, and we got just a smidge more about the group, the bad guys, the group of this bad guys that we're, I guess, eventually going to run into, we didn't really get much more about them either. I mean, we got them on screen a little bit more, actually less in this episode than last episode, but we didn't really learn much more about them either. I mean, not really. We didn't really get much more about them. I'm not sure also what the show's wanting to do with them, if it's wanting us to sympathize with them or it's trying to vilify them. I don't know. It's just all kind of up in the air. I'm going to reserve judgment because we still got 3 more episodes, and maybe they'll turn it around, and things that'll happen later on in the series might, make some of this stuff make more sense. But honestly, at this point, I don't see it. We're coming up on, we're at the halfway mark of this season, and we haven't really gotten anywhere. Nothing really has happened. I mean, stuff has happened on screen. It's looked cool. It's looked nice. Some of it's even been exciting. But nothing has really happened. This story hasn't really kicked off. It's been a lot of building, which, if there's going to be a great payoff, okay. But do we really need 3 full episodes, 50% of your season, to be building with no direction? I mean, I'm okay with building. I love building characters, building world. That's wonderful. But you gotta give us something. You gotta start that story arc at some point. And at this point, I don't feel like it has really been started effectively. So there's that. And after last week's debacle of how the show was fine, but then they did have that thing. Like I said, if you follow the news, you know what I'm talking about. It's just very out of place. Very out of place. And I don't like that stuff in my entertainment, honestly. I just kind of want to, there's escapism, and that's not what I'm getting. But that was last week's episode. But coming off of that, that did put a bit of a sour taste in my mouth to a degree. It made me, perk up. But after watching this one, it's kind of like, okay, I come off of that, and now I'm going into this, and there's not really anything going on here. What's next? I mean, next week's show, if it doesn't do something really just eye-catching, if next week's show doesn't just really do something special and move this story forward and at least kick it off and get it going, I'm going to really start to worry about the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because so far, technically, from a technical perspective, the show's good. I'm kind of wowed at some points of how good it looks and its technical prowess, but narratively, there's just nothing. There's nothing here. So yeah, Marvel, Bucky and Sam and Falcon and Winter Soldier, you need to step up your game next week. You really need to come hard next Friday with episode 4 and get this thing going, because as of right now, if it weren't for me saying I was going to be reviewing the whole season of this show for my channel, I don't know how compelled I would be to tune in next week. Probably wouldn't be, honestly. I would probably just say, I might watch it when I watch it, catch it sometime. Maybe that's next week. Maybe that's next month. Maybe it's next year. I don't know. But there's nothing really compelling me and getting me excited to see what's to come with this show. But that's just my opinion. Those are my thoughts. If you're a big MCU fan, I'm sure you've already seen this show. But tell me what you think. Do you guys agree? Do you think I'm just stupid? That no, you're insane. This show's amazing. Or do you think that think outside that box for a minute and say that there's not much going on here? What do you think? Do you agree? Do you not? Let me know in the comments below. But hey, I really appreciate you guys hanging out and checking out this video. This, like I said, this is new to me, doing the TV show thing. That's why I'm doing it within my podcast background and all that. But if this takes off, people like my takes on the TV shows, maybe I might start doing some more of them here or there. We'll see how it goes. But hey, I really appreciate it. I'll be back here next week, Friday or Saturday at some point, to give you my take on episode 4 of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And I really do hope that episode is, got something going on. I hope I'm on there with all smiles to tell you I was wrong, or hey, they redeemed themselves and we're back, baby. But it ain't looking good right now, in my opinion. But hopefully they surprise me and pull it out. They got the talent, they have the opportunity, they have everything they need. They got all the right puzzle pieces. I just hope they got somebody who knows how to put that puzzle together. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Jarcast Movie Podcast. If you like this and want more, then check out the Jarcast live stream every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Central Time on the Jacob Anders Review YouTube channel, where you can also find movie reviews every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. You can also listen to the entire podcast on all major podcasting platforms such as Spotify, Google, and iTunes. So if you prefer audio, whichever one is your preferred, check it out there. Once again, I really appreciate it, and thanks for watching. And as always, stay sexy, YouTube.